Something I would like to discuss is the death of my stepbrother Anthony G and the death of my mother Melissa G and their relation to each other. Anthony G is the son of Dwight G, owner of Athens Fence Company. He's his firstborn son. Dwight G and Anthony's mother were first cousins. The rest of Dwight's sons, Matt G, Chris G, and Jason G, they're by a different mother, Diana Gray, maybe. And I know Anthony G was treated different and always felt like the black sheep. So this is the interesting parallels between my mother's Melissa G's death and Anthony G. When Anthony G died, there was so much blood on the scene. I think he was found in the bathroom. There was so much blood on the scene, they thought he had been stabbed. But apparently, he had crapped the blood out. And he had a bowel movement when he died, and he crapped blood everywhere. And it took about 6 months for the coroner's report to come back, but it was eventually ruled a fentanyl overdose. If anybody knows, fentanyl does not make you crap blood. How that parallels my mother Melissa G's death is that a month before she died, she crapped blood. She had to go to Athens Hospital late at night, and she crapped blood all over the bathroom. And I've been saying for a long time she was poisoned, and I have pictures of the evidence that she had from her phone. I know one comment she made was that, Dwight G made it that night at the hospital. He said, "I'm taking you to the hospital. I don't want to get blamed for this." I just think it's real peculiar. So we have to look at who stood to profit off the death of Anthony G. Maybe his wife, Christy G. Possibly that's who I would think. You know, as I've said before, there was a lot of incongruencies with the money that when my mother died, my aunt, Monica Fowler, ended up getting a life insurance policy from my mother that was never supposed to be hers. Never supposed to be. It was supposed to go to my grandmother, Shirley Fouch, there was unusual things about her death as well. It was supposed to go to hers. So about a year before my mother died, my grandmother died, and this life insurance policy unexpectedly passed to Monica Fowler. I don't believe that it was ever meant for Monica Fowler. I've asked her to show me the signatures on it, and she never would. She never once did. What does she have to hide is what I want to know. What does she have to hide? There was a picture from my mama's phone where my grandmother Shirley Fouch looked beat up. My mother took the picture. And so there was, as I said before, there was unusual things. Monica Fowler and Dwight G and my stepmother Teresa Farler and my stepsister Dallas Duke, they were all in communication and in cahoots for some reason. Unusual bedfellows, I would say. As I said before, I think Teresa's been involved in supplying poison to people. She worked in end-of-life healthcare. When my mother was in her final stages of passing, I said I thought something weird was going on. And I said on Facebook, my mother's being murdered and hospice is involved. And what was interesting, and I wish I had the screenshots of this, for some reason the hospice workers were stalking my Facebook page even though I didn't know them. And one of them commented, so I said something on there, but I didn't say my mother's name and I didn't say Dwight's name. And a lady who worked for hospice who I had never met before commented on there. And she said their names, actually said their names out loud. And I messaged her and I said, doesn't that break HIPAA for you to say their names on there? And why are you watching my page like this? I said, I didn't say their names at all, and I've never met you, so why are you watching my page like that? And that's real unusual, I think. And when all this stuff was going on, I was told by Mariah Arena that this human trafficking network was killing people, and they were using boric acid to make them sick. Boric acid causes lesions on the body called red lobster sores, and there was pictures from my mother's phone that I still have that look like red lobster boils. Red lobster boils is what they're called. It also causes bleeding from the interior of the stomach, which would explain them crapping blood right before they died. Something else that's interesting, I think my mother knew this was going on for several different reasons. One, she was photographing the evidence of what was happening to her body. My mother was sick. She knew to stay alive, she was going to have to be on continue to be on chemo the rest of her life. She'd been on chemo for 2 years, and she was tired. I think she knew it was going on, and she knew I would never leave if she was alive, so she allowed it to happen. Because before she died, I always drank my mama's drinks, and we were real close. She did not want me to drink her drinks. I think she thought there was poison in them. As well, so here's something else interesting of note that's noteworthy. My stepfather, Dwight G., was prescribed testosterone injections from the doctor. And you use an insulin needle and you inject it. 6 or 7 months before my mother died, I got some of his testosterone, and I got an insulin needle, and I took it back, and I gave myself an injection of it. I gave my stepfather, made a big deal about it like he did everything. I gave him the bottle back, and he told my mama, he said he might have poisoned it. He said, I'm not taking that. He could have poisoned it. I said to my mama, I said, why in the hell would he say that? The only people that worry about somebody poisoning them is poisoners. And my mama said, that's right. I think my aunt Monica Fowler knew. I think my stepmother Teresa Fowler was in on it. And I think for sure my stepfather did it. And there was just a lot of fucked up shit going on. And I'd been saying it. And he was trying to have me silenced for over a year before my mother died. So the same time my grandmother died, the life insurance policy that I was the sole beneficiary for didn't go to my grandmother and then pass to somebody else. I was the sole beneficiary for it. The same time my grandmother died by unnatural means. She didn't die by natural means. They overdosed her. Hospice overdosed her. I know they did. The same time that my grandmother died, he let the policy that was supposed to go to me lapse on purpose. And my mama had paid for that for years. If you have a life insurance policy and it lapses, you get the deductible where you've been paying for it all those years. I didn't get the deductible. He did, which is illegal. Dwight G did. And so he let that lapse on purpose, I think, because they knew that if I got my money, I would be in a position to expose them. So here's something else that's unusual. My stepfather tried to prevent me from going to my mother's funeral. He had other people try to prevent me from going to my mother's funeral. Sarah Elizabeth, what was her last name? She dated Josh Temple, and she was living with Josh Temple at his grandmother's house. She got arrested with Grady Gadsden. She was targeting me and gaslighting me, and she got arrested at the house of Grady Gadsden, who worked for the Department of Defense from Limestone County, who got arrested for 60 counts of child pornography and human trafficking. He got arrested by Kristen King, who I met more than once because of the stuff that was happening with Dwight. About a year in 2019, about a year before my mother died, right after my grandmother died, some guns ended up getting stolen at the house of Dwight G by people I thought were friends of mine, who ended up being the brother-in-law of Josh Temple and his mother's boyfriend, and they happened to be subcontractors for Dwight G. As I said before, Josh Temple, Sarah Elizabeth, that was her name, Sarah Elizabeth. She got arrested at the house of Grady Gatson, who got arrested for human trafficking. So a year before that, those two, when my mama and Dwight had been in Atlanta at the Cancer Treatment Center for the weekend, those two, so Sarah Elizabeth, who was arrested with Grady Gatson, was targeting me. And then a year before that, maybe a little bit less, in 2019, I was targeted by people in that same circle so she was Josh Temple's girlfriend. And then a year before that, I was targeted by his aunt's boyfriend and his mama's boyfriend. And I can't think of their names off the top of my head. I'll come back to it. Kristen King knows. She remembers the case. So they got me all fucked up on all different kinds of stuff and came over to my house and then stole a bunch of my stepdaddy's guns. Well, as soon as they got back, and they worked for my stepdaddy, and I didn't know it. As soon as my stepdaddy and my mama got back from Atlanta from the Cancer Treatment Center, he walked in the house, and without even bringing his bags in, he went and looked where those guns were at, and immediately started saying I stole his guns and that he was filing a police report, which he did. The police got called out there, and they took me in for questioning. Well, this is when I first realized there was a conspiracy going on. So when nobody was around, the police wasn't right there, and my mama was inside because she just had done chemo. This is the shit she was dealing with. It was her piece of shit husband, and all this conspiracy is she was dying because they're killing her. So he said to me, he said, you're going to go to jail for conspiracy to commit murder, when nobody was around. My stepfather, Dwight G, did. He said that to me. Well, it turns out one of the guns went off by somebody else's head, and it was by the grace of God that it didn't kill him. He told me, what was their names? I'll think of it. He told me, the guy told me, he said, I tried to kill him. The gun went off by his head, but I wasn't able, but it missed him. So my stepdad, as evidence that he gave to the police for this, he said he found a cell phone in the bathroom in the corner. He said he found one of their cell phones and their Facebook Messenger was open on it. One of these guys that had stole the phones that worked for him, he said they had forgot their cell phone in the bathroom, and one of their Facebook Messenger was on it, and he could see where I messaged him and said, you need to get those guns back. My stepdad's gonna be pissed. Well, I told the police about that phone, and he had to turn that phone over to the police, and Christian had it looked into. That was not one of their cell phones. That was a cell phone that belonged to his grandson, Christian G. Chris G. Dwight's son, Chris G, is Christian G's father. So that phone he had been stolen from Christian G a while before that. It had been stolen by his father, Chris G, and everybody knew about it. So for some reason, Dwight had a cell phone that had the Facebook Messenger of one of his employees who stole guns from him, blaming it on me. And the phone came from his son, Chris G. It was all a big conspiracy to get me out of the way. So they could commit murder. Furthermore, as I stated before, these people that were targeting me tried to prevent me from going to my mother's funeral. My mother's funeral was rushed. It wasn't held at a funeral home. Even though my mother was popular, well loved, and well known in the community, and everybody loved her, the funeral, there was nothing normal about the funeral. There was no, as usually goes, there's visitation one day and the burial the next. It was all rushed into one day, into 4 or 5 hours. There was no visitation. The people came, looked at the casket, and she's buried right after it. And it didn't happen at the funeral home. It happened at her local church. It was meant to be rushed. I went to the funeral home to see my mother. Spry Funeral Home, I believe it is, in Athens on Highway 72. I went there before the funeral to see my mother alone. And I went there to see my mother alone. And the director of the funeral home said, "Don't let Dwight find out you came here." So for some reason, my stepfather had a problem with me being around my mother's body. As well, he let me get a locket of her hair. And I know where that locket of her hair is. And I think if they test that locket, they could find out if there's poison in it. And I believe if the police got a search warrant, they could go, because I know where it is. They could get that locket of hair. I know exactly where it is. They could get that locket of hair and have it tested and find out if there was poison in it. And I think that needs to be looked into as well. The connection between my mother's death and Anthony G's death, and who profited from both those deaths. And did Teresa Farler and Jerry Farler happen to have a life insurance policy on Melissa G? Because for some reason, my mother gave me her cell phone when no one was looking 2 weeks before she died. And Teresa Farler and my father, Jerry Farler, worked in conjunction with my stepfather, Dwight G, to get the cell phone back. Unusual bedfellows, I believe. I would urge detectives of the Limestone County Police Department and the Lauderdale County Police Department to execute search warrants to retrieve this locket of hair and have it tested for poison. When they tried to have me framed for stealing those guns, that's the first time I met Kristen King, and I was able to get the guns back. But that's how I met Kristen King, and she had been trying to pin some stuff on my stepbrother Matt G several times, and she said Dwight was well connected. And I know she had on 3 different occasions. At that point, she told me on 3 different occasions she had felony charges for theft pressed against my stepbrother. And the day of court, my stepdad would show up at court, talk to the DA, and they drop the charges. How come a fence company owner is so well connected? And what is going on in Limestone County for that to even be possible? You know, there's murders going on in this county. Mariah Arena is the one that told me they were using boric acid to poison people and make them sick. As well, she said they're using venomous animals. And Mom, I have the pictures. There was marks on my mama's body that looked like snake bites. Which, you know, there's snake handling churches 2 counties over. It wouldn't be that hard for somebody to acquire venomous snakes. I think my mama knew this was going on, because a few months before she died, she tagged me in a post on Facebook that said, "Adam, I love you more than life itself." And I think she knew that the only way for me that I would ever leave and get out of this dangerous situation, because you gotta think he was abusing me, trying to have me framed, putting guns to my head. My mama knew all this, and she couldn't do anything about it. She was too sick, and the police were working on my stepfather's side. As well, he had me barred from her house for no reason, from the house they lived in together 6 months before she died. Preemptively, I would think. I've already told everybody how they ran me out of the house she owned in Athens, Alabama. How I came back from the hospital the last time she was in the hospital in Huntsville, Alabama, and the locks were removed, and everything had been removed out of the house, and the house had been ransacked, and they had spray painted threats. I got the pictures. And I think they had friends in law enforcement in Athens, Alabama, and with Limestone County Sheriff who helped. I went back and looked at the house, and because I had been able to get the house locked back up, I went back and looked at the house, and the door had been busted in with a battering ram. Who has battering rams? Police do. Everybody knows there's some crooked stuff going on in Limestone County and Athens. The sheriff just got put in jail and convicted of financial crimes. And what else was he involved in? Because everybody knows he knew everything that went on in Limestone County. I believe the right thing to do would be execute a search warrant at these properties where I know a lock of hair has contacted me, and I'll tell you where it is, and you can go find it and have that lock of hair tested for poison. And I believe Monica Fowler was just as much involved as the rest of them. And I have pictures of text messages from Dallas Duke, the stepdaughter of my father, Jerry Farler, saying they all knew what was going on. Dallas Duke said that to me. She said they all knew what was going on. She said that in a text message. And I got screenshots of it. So one of the names of the employees of Dwight G that was involved in stealing those guns was Jeremy Adams. And he was dating Josh Temple's mama. No, he was dating Josh Temple's aunt. His mama's sister. Jeremy Adams. It was her. He was a subcontractor for Dwight G. He was involved in stealing phones. And he was involved in trying to frame me. And he said that he tried to kill the other guy. If we go back and look at Chris's notes, or if I go back and look at my notes, I can find the other guy's name. Jeremy Adams of Athens, Alabama. As well, it should be noted, among other offenses by the G's, that Jason G raped his stepdaughter, Hannah, daughter of Cynthia G, when she was a minor. And it was investigated by the Limestone County Sheriff, but they never would follow through on it. Now, why does the Limestone County Sheriff keep covering up crimes by the G's? I think people deserve to know why. What's special about these motherfuckers? What's special about them? Unless Limestone County and Mike Blakely were involved in the same illegal stuff that they were involved in. And it was in their best interest to cover up their crimes. I have screenshots from Hannah's brother talking about Jason G raping her when she was a minor. She was drunk and he raped her. And then Cynthia accepted money. Cynthia accepted $16,000 from Dwight G as a payoff to keep quiet about it, which constitutes human trafficking. And for some reason, Limestone County Sheriff won't do nothing about it. Why is that? I have the screenshots of Cynthia messaging my mom asking for a $16,000 payoff. She says the word payoff. I have the screenshots. Jason Kellum, that was the other guy that was involved in stealing those guns, that was and trying to frame me, that was subcontracted and an employee of Dwight G. Jeremy Adams and Jason Kellum. Jason Kellum dated Josh Temple's mother, and Jeremy Adams dated his aunt. And I was targeted by his girlfriend, Sarah Elizabeth, who was arrested at the house of Grady Gadsden, who got arrested for human trafficking and 60 counts of child pornography, including raping little boys. These are the kind of crimes that the former sheriff of Limestone County tried to cover up. These are the kind of people he tried to protect. And I think everybody deserves to know the truth. I think the equation needs to be balanced. The scales have to be balanced. Jesus is going to come in and balance the scales. Justice is coming for all these people. The sheriff's out of the way. The sheriff's out of the way. Now he's coming for Dwight G. and Teresa Farler and Monica Fowler and Jason G. and Matt G. and Chris G. We got rapists and murderers and human traffickers running around Athens, Alabama, and people want to cover it up because they got money. Because that's all people care about these days is money. But God said what happens in the dark will come to the light. That's what my mama said too. It's all coming out. Everybody's going to know. Everybody knows. Everybody knows. And they'll get their justice. They are already imprisoned in their minds by it. Everything will come to light. God removed me from this place so I could be spared by these people, so I could tell the truth of my story. That these people are evil. That they're murderers and rapists. and conniving. And they need to pay for the crimes. They need to pay for the murders. And I'll never stop till they do. They didn't know they was messing with somebody official. They thought they'd get rid of me. They thought they'd be able to silence me. They thought they'd be able to kill me. Well, it didn't work. Because God took me away from there. So I could come back and tell you what happened. Now it's up to you to do something about it. Are you going to let these people run around because they got money? Are you going to stand up for what you learned in church, in the Sunday school? Are we going to let the world be a bad place for people that have money to do whatever they want? Or are we going to be good people and stand up for what's right? That's what you got to ask yourself. Are we going to continue to allow this happen with our local politicians, with our politicians in government, with our businessmen? Why do you think the world's so corrupt? Because we allow people with money to get away with murder. And they took them to Vacation Bible School and they sang, "This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine all the time." Are we gonna shine the light of God on this evil and let it be exposed? Are we gonna make the world better? Or are we gonna let it be the same? Nasty, evil. Are we gonna chop the head off the snake? It's up to you. It's up to you. It's up to you.